It would be an understatement to say that I love comic book movies, and one of the key ingredients to a great comic book movie is the villain. So today I'm going to give you my picks for the 10 best comic book movie villains of all time. So let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your picks for the 10 best comic book movie villains of all time. My list is not the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. But along those same lines, I have a companion video along with this one over on my Patreon page, where I actually give 16 more of my picks for the best comic book movies villains of all time. Join at any level over on Patreon, and you can see my actual top 26 comic book movie villains when you put it together with this video, and let's get started. Kicking things off at number 10 is Catwoman from Batman Returns. Now, the reason I think she's a great villain is that she touches on a bunch of the different things that can make a villain compelling. She has a strong revenge motivation in that she wants to get Max Schreck for pushing her out a window, and then she's also kind of insane. She's actually snapped because she died and came back, and so she both has an actual motivation as well as being on the crazy side, and then she gets along with our hero really well. They have really good chemistry, and so when you put all that together, you have a character that has very complex, interesting relationships with everyone around them. Also, Michelle Pfeiffer plays her in such a way that's so fun, where she can be terrifying, she can be funny, all the different stuff combined together to make for one very cool villain. Next up is Neville Sinclair from The Rocketeer. Now, this is a deep cut, but a movie came out in the early 90s called The Rocketeer, and it was based off of a comic book. Here, Timothy Dalton plays kind of this golden age of Hollywood movie star that also happens to be a Nazi with a bunch of mob ties. And so when you get someone like Timothy Dalton, who's been a James Bond, lots of stage work behind him, he can just kind of chew up the scenery, both playing kind of this charismatic star that everybody knows, the villain hiding in plain sight, but then he's also this mischievous mastermind that's always kind of trying to figure out how to win, all with plans to give this rocket technology to Hitler so that he can take over the world, put it all together, and he's over the top enough, grounded enough, different enough that he's one of the great movie villains that not enough people talk about. Number 8 is Ocean Master from Aquaman. Now, what makes him a great villain to me is that he is the hero of his own story. There's a compelling argument on his side for why he is right. He perceives of the mainland people as polluting the oceans, therefore he sees them as an actual threat to the world, and he's not wrong in the point that he is making. Likewise, he sees Aquaman as a threat to the kingdom, as he was raised on the mainland. He does not know their ways, so the idea of him coming in is a violation of their traditions. So on so many levels, he's not just kind of this crazy person that wants to do evil. He sees himself as the noble hero that's making the hard choices in order to preserve his kingdom. Now, he might be limited in his perspective. He might be doing things that have negative consequences, especially someone that lives on the mainland don't particularly want him to destroy us. But there's a compelling reason behind all of it. Add to it the complex dynamic with their mother and the relationship behind all of it, and you just get a character that actually connects to the other people around him in an interesting way, leading to real conflict beyond just wanting to punch people in the face and swing tridents at one another, and that's what makes for a cool villain. Then we have the Vulture from Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, a lot of the villains on this list are people with big, gigantic master plans to blow up cities, destroy the earth, conquer the world, and then you have Vulture, who just wants to make a living. I've said it before, but he's kind of like the Walter White of the MCU. He's just a guy that got screwed over by the system, and in that process slowly started down this path of becoming a supervillain just for the purpose of making money, and lost his path along the way. Add into the mix that he has that personal connection to Peter Parker, and it just adds that interesting twist into it where It doesn't need to be big and spectacular in nature because it's personal, compelling, and interesting, and that's what makes it different and unique. Then we have Ra's al Ghul from Batman Begins. He's on the other side of things from the Vulture. He is a villain with a master plan to destroy a city. As the leader of the League of Shadows, he's kind of both a mastermind, he's a physical threat himself, but he's also a father figure to our hero, which makes him such a complex, interesting character. He views Bruce Wayne as someone that could be one of his greatest allies if he will join the cause. And in his mind, once again, he's the hero of his own story, trying to bring order to the universe by using these extreme tactics to try and stop evil in the world, not realizing that he becomes the evil threat himself. But when you kind of combine the fact that at the beginning, he is the friend, he is the mentor, he's the reason that this version of Batman has all the skills that he has, and then at the end of the film, you have that set of skills being of the student having to face down against the teacher as the teacher turns out to be the bad guy in the story. Very cool, interesting dynamics to all of that. He is a true believer, and then of course played by Liam Neeson, so he just has this compelling vibe to him, and you can be afraid of him, and then you can look up to him. You can see the pride in his eyes when he sees Bruce Wayne do certain things. Put it all together. Great villain. In fifth place is Killmonger from Black Panther. Now, what this movie did so well is create a villain who is absolutely a murderer. He's backstabbing, he's conniving, he's evil, but there's also a certain amount of truth inside of his worldview. He sees a legitimate problem in what Wakanda has been doing and the way that they've related to the world throughout the past, and he wants to correct that. Now, the way he chooses to do this is through all sorts of evil things that are bad that he shouldn't be doing, but there is a truth inside of his argument. So as you go throughout the course of the movie, we need Black Panther to defeat him so that he can't be this tyrant that's using their forces to wage war on the world. But at the same time, by the time we get to the end of the film, he wins the moral victory. He wins over T'Challa and Wakanda to change, and therefore, that's what makes him kind of this character that has all kinds of complexity to him and more conflict than your average villain, in that he actually was a positive agent for change while being also an agent of evil at the same time. Number 4 is Loki from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, one of the more compelling characters inside of the MCU because he's not simply a good guy or a bad guy. He falls on both sides depending on the moment. So much of his actions are driven by a jealousy towards his brother and the desire to impress his father, and when he can't earn respect, he tries to force it through manipulation and gaining power. All of this leading to the events of the Avengers, where he wages war on Earth, basically driven just out of spite and to ruin the things that his brother loves. And all of that makes him this interesting character as he also comes back around and helps Thor in other films. He's willing to make sacrifices at certain points in times while never really becoming a good guy. He's always trying to manipulate situations so that he gets the upper hand. All of those are the nice nuances, details, the turnarounds that make him a really nice piece to the Marvel Cinematic Universe that's very frequently on the villainous side. Real quick before I give you my top 3, remember to share your picks down below in the comment section. I mean it, my list is not the right list. It's just my list, and I would love to see yours to see what villains you love. Also remember, I have a companion video to this over on my Patreon page with 16 more villains that I rank. So if you put the 2 videos together, you can really see my top 26 comic book movie villains. If you've enjoyed this video, you'll definitely enjoy that one. Join at any level and you can unlock it. In 3rd place is Magneto from the X-Men franchise. Now, what makes Magneto such a great villain is that he's best friends with Charles Xavier. They're 2 people that respect one another. They're 2 people that enjoy each other's company, but they have such dramatically different worldviews that it's taken them on 2 different paths. One of them grew up in a context where he saw optimism and hope and friendship with humanity. And then you have Eric on the other side, who grew up through World War II in concentration camps, and it warped his mind into only seeing the worst in humanity and turning him fully against them. And that's where you have a great villain, where it's not just that they don't like each other, it's not just that they're different. They actually, in certain ways, share so many value sets, enjoy one another, and the conflict is so personal because of it. And at times, of course, he teams up with Charles, he has all the back and forth, but because their idea of the world is so different, they're constantly coming head to head with one another, clashing. And whether you're talking about the Ian McKellen or the Michael Fassbender versions, both of them are fantastic, great performance, great nuance, and great relationship with Charles Xavier. So one of the best comic book villains we've ever had. Our runner-up is Thanos from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Kevin Feige hit his big, gigantic master plan, all building up to Infinity War and Endgame. And so starting with the post-credit scene on the Avengers started to tease Thanos years in advance. He showed up at Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, little tease in Age of Ultron, and then finally we got him full swing in Infinity War. And one of the things that movie did so well is really give Thanos the biggest character arc and the most development as you start to dive into what is causing him to have this insane plan to kill half of the universe. What did he see? What did he experience that made him believe that this was the right thing to do? And it's that kind of backstory that makes you kind of go just a little bit. What drove this guy to be insane? What drove him to actually believe this was a good thing to do and the way to save the universe? That's when you have a compelling character, when you can actually convince me of that argument. Then even as you go into Endgame, and some people complain he's not quite as compelling, but they already did all the hard work of developing him in the previous film. So you get to see him as just an angry guy that still wants to complete his mission. So that didn't really bother me because we did get all the heavy lifting in the previous films. And so you get the best villain of this big mammoth Infinity Saga in the MCU. So obviously he was going to be a top contender for me. But coming in at first place is the Joker. And when I say the Joker, I mean actually 3 of the different Jokers out there because I didn't want to have multiple Jokers on this list. But you can look at Jack Nicholson, Mark Hamill in Mask of the Phantasm, and of course Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. And you get 3 fantastic comic book movie villains all as the Joker, wildly different interpretations of the character, but all of them bringing something interesting and different to the table. Now, in my rankings of the Joker, of this batch of them, I normally put Heath Ledger on top as to this agent of chaos that is the opposite of Batman, that just kind of creates exactly the moral tension to the cause that Bruce Wayne is fighting for inside of Gotham. But then you can kind of go to kind of the more traditional version of the Joker with Jack Nicholson that's cracking more jokes. We get to see him fall into the acid and have all of these wacky schemes of causing people to die from laughing too much. And, as much as there's things about that movie that haven't aged well, like it's a fun version of the Joker that's a little bit more comic book true in some of the more direct tropes. And then, of course, Mark Hamill as the Joker in Batman the Animated Series, and then the film that was theatrically released, Mask of the Phantasm, is an amazing version of the Joker that also is a classic comic book true version. So any way you want to spin it, there's multiple different fantastic versions of this character that are such a great foil to one of the best, if not the best comic book character of all time. So put it all together, and the person that came out on top for me, without question, was the Joker in many of his different forms. Remember, if you like this video, there is a companion video to it over on my Patreon page with 16 more of my favorite comic book movie villains of all time. Put it all together and you can see my top 26. If you want more content right now, there's also that video right over there that you can check out. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.